On this channel, we provide useful programming information with practical code examples. This time, the topic is inheritance in SASS. We will explain inheritance in SASS with practical examples. Enabling subtitles will make the code descriptions easier to understand. Inheritance in SASS, at Extend, is a mechanism that allows you to apply the styles of one selector to another without duplication. Since the same styles are combined and output for multiple elements in the markup, the resulting CSS is less likely to be redundant. However, if used improperly, it can lead to unintended selector merges. Below is a basic example where .btn primary inherits the styles of .btn. At Extend is a directive that extends the target selector. When converting the SASS file to CSS, it will look like this. By using @extend.btn primary inherits the base styles of .btn and overrides only the necessary parts. Placeholder selectors, %name, are selectors that are not output to CSS. They are widely used especially when you want to safely share common styles exclusively for inheritance across multiple components. When converting the SASS file to CSS, it will look like this. Card and panel both inherit from %card base, allowing them to share common styles while adding differences as needed. You can inherit multiple placeholders or classes at the same time. While style reusability is improved, it's important to keep track of which rules are combined with which selectors. When converting the SASS file to CSS, it will look like this. This is an example where a button inherits two placeholders, one for base and one for size. .btn LG inherits both %btn base and %btn large, combining the basic layout with larger sizing. At Extend, outputs all matching selectors merge together, which can sometimes result in unintended combinations of selectors. The following example shows how the output can increase when the same base class is extended in multiple places. When converting the SASS file to CSS, it will look like this. When multiple components inherit utility, selectors are merged into one and, in large-scale projects, this can cause CSS to bloat. At Extend can be applied not only to classes but also to element selectors. However, extending elements increases the affected scope, raising the risk of rules being unintentionally applied in unintended places. Below is an example of extending an element selector and the effect it can have. When converting the SASS file to CSS, it will look like this. In this example, inheriting the element selector, H1 causes title to be merged with the same styles as H1. While it may seem convenient in small-scale cases, as your project grows, rules for H1 could unexpectedly combine with title, making styles more complex and reducing maintainability. Therefore, designing styles primarily around classes and placeholders makes them easier to maintain. If you specify optional with @extend, you can suppress errors when the inheritance target does not exist. This is particularly useful in library-like code or cases where placeholders are conditionally defined. The following is an example of safely attempting to inherit a class that may not exist, using optional. When converting the SASS file to CSS, it will look like this. If maybe existing does not exist, nothing happens and it is skipped. You can use this when you want to attempt an extension safely. @extend and @mixin sometimes have overlapping purposes, but their outputs and use cases differ. Below is a comparison using both @mixin and @extend to implement the same button styles. When converting the SASS file to CSS, it will look like this. @mixin lets you flexibly insert styles, while @extend consolidates output efficiently, so you can use each as appropriate depending on the use case. SASS inheritance is a powerful feature for increasing style reusability. However, incorrect use can make style merging complex and reduce maintainability. Below are some key points for using inheritance safely and efficiently. Use placeholders for purely common component styles such as structure and layout. Additionally, if dynamic parameterization is required, you can use @mixin. You should avoid directly inheriting HTML elements such as H1. Unintended selector combinations may occur, potentially resulting in unexpected CSS being generated. Using naming conventions like BEM or clear prefixes to show what each placeholder is for helps keep things safe. It is safer to use @extend within the same file. Especially in large projects, it is advisable to design inheritance within the scope of each component to make it easier to track inheritance relationships. The @extend feature in SASS is a convenient way to efficiently reuse common styles and ensure design consistency. However, as selector combinations can easily become complex, it is necessary to use this feature carefully and in a limited scope. By grouping shared styles with placeholder selectors, %placeholder, and using @mixin for parts that require dynamic parameters, you can maintain a simple and easily maintainable design. The source code for this video can be downloaded from the official website. If you like, please visit the URL in the description to aid your learning. Your support keeps this channel motivated. Please subscribe to the channel.